Welcome to Walpole Five-0. I'm Chief John Carmichael. Today is February 14th, 2017. So hopefully you went out and got your wife or your girlfriend a Valentine's card. And so a little shout out to my wife, Happy Valentine's Day, even though I know she doesn't watch me on here, but I'll bring your card home later. Getting into a pretty busy week. First of all, I just want to mention Student Police Advisory Council. We met this past week, and they had a good turnout, and we had the Metro Lec Bearcat come out from the SWAT team. And what that is an armored personnel carrier. Officer Hart, Officer Crown, Officer Thayer, Officer Bethany, Sergeant O'Connell all came out as well. And we had a good discussion about what some of the things are that Metro does as far as our SWAT team, as far as what Officer Hart does. Officer Thayer is actually part of the Bicycle Patrol Unit. Sergeant O'Connell is part of the Investigative Services Unit. And then Officer Hart is actually part of the Crisis Negotiation Team. And so each officer came out and they explained to Stupak what their role is as far as Metro is concerned. And then afterwards we went out and looked at the Bearcat, and they got to go inside of it and kind of check that out. And so it was a really good meeting. We also had some of the kids from Longview Farm come up that are now going to become members of Stupak as well. So we welcome the kids at Longview as part of the Student Police Advisory Council. And so that was a great time. And one of the things I just want to mention is that, that the Bearcat that they use, this armored personnel carrier, that same type of vehicle has been used in critical incidents across the nation, and have sometimes been referred to as, with the militarization of police, being a tank or something like that. And it's not a tank. It's not equipped with equipment like that. Its sole purpose is to be an armored personnel carrier, to be able to move SWAT members into a shooter situation or a possible shooter situation and keep them protected through the barricade of armor. And so thank you to those officers and Metro SWAT for allowing us to show the Bearcat. Promotional exams, we just had a grueling 2-day process for sergeants and lieutenants, patrolmen that are looking to be sergeants, as well as sergeants looking to be lieutenants, and we had a great turnout. Our officers, we had 14 officers go out for sergeant and 4 for the lieutenant positions, and it was a great grueling 2-day process for the officers to go through. It really does help with career development, even though there can only be one person at the top or whatever. But this consisted of a written exam component, which was based on Mass General Law, based on our policies and procedures here in the department, and a lot of other reading material, as the officers had to write 2 different papers during this time, and also they had to be put through 3 assessment modules, which ultimately gave them their final score. But this was a long 2 days for every one of them, and I appreciate their efforts in getting in there and participating in this process, and I'm proud of what they did, and we're proud of the results as well. So great job there. Bus, we had a call by people saying that the MBTA bus had the call police flashing on the front of the bus. This does occasionally happen. If there is a problem on the bus driver can activate the call police signal, and will typically stop that bus and intervene with any problems that are occurring on the bus. In this case, the bus driver had accidentally hit it, and so there was no real problems on the bus. But we did stop and check that out anyways. MBTA security, they notified us prior to the Pats rally last week, and what ended up happening, I think it was one of the most well-attended events that we've seen in Boston in a long time for the Patriots Parade and the rally downtown, with I think there was over 1 million people, and over 200,000 people actually rode the train that day. So the MBTA Transit Police had asked us to provide some extra security at our bus stops as well as at our train stops on that day. And trains were actually running late. They were running 30 to 40 minutes late that day, and they were packed. I mean, the trains going in and outbound from Boston during the Pats rally were absolutely packed, and that was a good thing. We didn't have a whole lot of problems, but we did get on the trains every time they would pull in and just make sure everything was running smoothly. I will get into one incident that was reported to us as a result of the Pats rally that day. Getting into the log entries on February 7th, starting out, a domestic assault and battery, boyfriend and girlfriend. This is kind of a strange case, but we were getting calls that there was a possible fight on Washington by the DPW, and officers responded down there. The car had fled prior to our arrival, but was ultimately stopped moments later down towards South Walpole by Officer Moriarty. And what we discovered was an Uber driver with 3 other passengers inside of the vehicle. And when they separated each individual to find out what happened, the Uber driver had made comments that had picked up these people for the past couple of days and basically drove around with them all over the area, back and forth into Boston, all over our area, while they were smoking crack in the car. So when the officers got everybody separated, they did discover crack pipes and crack inside of the vehicle. Crack is a form of cocaine, a Class B substance. And what they found was, and they did have a witness also, and the Uber driver himself, that this individual, they got into an argument with the other people in the vehicle, had got out of the vehicle by the DPW and assaulted and battered this female individual multiple times on the side of the road on Washington Street. And ultimately, they all got into the same vehicle and fled prior to the police arrival, but we were able to pull them over. And Officer Moriarty did place that suspect under arrest for not only the assault and battery, but also for the crack that was located inside of the vehicle and charged with possession of Class B. So great job by the officers in locating this vehicle that had fled, because they may have gotten away and subjected this victim to further harm. So great job on that. Crash, I just threw this one in there because it was Washington Street at Poly, and I did mention in the past couple of programs that that's a bad intersection. Poly and Washington Street, Short Street and Washington Street, one of our most dangerous intersections in town where we have the most number of crashes. So I put that in there just as a reminder to always use caution at that intersection, because we do see a lot of crashes there. It's good that this particular crash did not have any personal injury, so we're glad for that. Going back to the transit police and the MBTA, on that same day that we were doing the extra security for the Pats rally, we were notified by a victim who was the victim of an indecent assault and battery or a sexual assault. What we found out is we took this victim, brought her back to the police station with a friend, and we interviewed them, and we found out that the incident did occur in Boston during and or after the event, and they were so frightened by what happened they ended up getting back on the train, coming back out this way, not from Walpole, but they, felt so endangered in town Boston that they wanted to get on the train and get out of there. What ended up happening is these 2 individuals met with other individuals that they did not know at the Uno's on Boylston Street in downtown Boston. And they had some conversation with these people, and they agreed to go back to these individuals' home. They all got into a vehicle and they drove to this home, which we think may be in Hyde Park or Reedville area, and coming from downtown Boston. And at some point, the male that was involved in this this group of people became aggressive and sexually assaultive toward one of the females that were in this group. And she did the right thing. She kind of fought her way out of that and then told them to drive them back to the train station, which they did, dropped them back off, and they got on the train and came back out this way. So our officers are working. They took the first complaint on this, and then they will have been in contact with Boston PD to continue this investigation and pass this on to Boston. This is just a situation. Part of why I threw this in there is to have these conversations. Now, these are young. These aren't teenagers. They're in their 20s, but to talk to your kids about this type of risky behavior, getting into a vehicle and going to a home that, they just didn't know who these people were and what could happen. And this situation here could have been much worse than what it actually turned out to be. So good conversation just as far as risk awareness, risk assessment, and risk reduction, getting away from that type of a situation and not putting yourself there because, as I said, that could have been much more harmful. Moving on to February 8th, that was the day we had those icy roads, and what ended up happening, our DPW did a great job during this entire last week's storms that we had, as well as the icing that we had starting on February 8th. But they were out there early, and they treated the roads, and then it was kind of wet also, so it kind of washed away some of the treatment that were already down, and then they came back and treated it again. So they did a great job. There was a consistent effort on their part, and sometimes Mother Nature doesn't work with us, and in that case it didn't. It was it was tough to keep up with it, and then after that, then the snow came in, so that really threw us off. But they did a great job keeping up with it, and you got to give them kudos for keeping our roads as clear as they did during that difficult time. But as a result of these the icy road day, we saw a car versus tree. A car struck a tree and the person was trapped inside up in North Walpole. The officers were able to help that individual, get them out of the vehicle, but that was kind of a bad crash, and it was no personal injury, so that was good. Then we had a rollover later on that morning, also in North Walpole, and again there was no personal injury in this crash, which is great. And North Walpole seemed to get the worst side of this. The roads got slick, and some of the roads up there are narrow, so that the cars are much more susceptible to sliding off the roadway, and that's what happened here as well. Then we had a school bus crash, a bus versus a pole, and there was only 2 students on the bus at the time that did have some concussion issues, apparently, but the bus did slide in the ice and then split a telephone pole in half, and the pole literally broke in half and came down on top of where the bus was. And so again, the students had very minor injuries, which I'm very happy for. I am a big proponent of seatbelts in schools, on school buses, by the way, but they do need the cross straps if they put them in buses, and it is an expense. But I'm a huge proponent of protecting our most vulnerable and our most precious students and kids, and I think that we should put seatbelts in buses. But in any event, I also put this in there to explain that a lot of times people, if they do hit a pole, or if they see a vehicle that hit a pole and wires come down, they don't really know what to do. And so it's important to remember that if you can, if the wires come down and you can back away from that scene safely, that's one thing you can do to kind of get away from the wires that came down. It's always good to beep your horn or to try and alert passersby of what's going on if you can. Warn others that not to touch your car, because you can get that electricity flow. But the best thing to do is if you're in there and the wires come down on the vehicle, call 911, get on the phone. Hopefully you have a cell phone. Police will get there, they'll assist, fire department will get there. We'll notify Eversource to shut the power off as quick as possible. Now, if there was a situation where the car could or is on fire, the best thing to do is to open the door, and you need to jump out of the car. So you need to hop out so that you're not touching the car and you're not touching the ground, so that you now become the conduit for any electricity that could be flowing through there. Because as long as you're inside of the vehicle, you have that shell, you have that protective shell, and you're grounded, and you couldn't be electrocuted. But once you step out and you hit the ground, you're touching that vehicle, you're putting yourself at significant danger. So try to avoid that. Basically, what we try and tell people to do is hop out of the car, keep your feet together, and then hop away, and then get away from the vehicle at a safe distance. And that can help. So you want to avoid any contact with the metal of the car and the ground at the same time. And then, the same thing is don't try to help someone else that's in that situation. So if you see that the wires have come down and they're on top of the car, and you're a passerby, you know, be very careful. Don't go up to that car, open the door, or touch the metal on that vehicle. In that case, wait for the police to get there. Wait for Eversource to shut the power down, then we can make the right decisions on getting somebody out. Also that day, we had a rollover of a cement truck. This was a fully loaded cement truck. This also occurred in North Walpole, and it took several hours to actually right this vehicle back up. And you know, this was another situation here where there was no injury. So we were very fortunate. We did have some significant crashes on that February 8th day. However, it is great that we didn't have any significant injuries or any, you know, and we kind of got by that. So I'm very happy for that. There was other minor crashes in nature, minor fender benders and that kind of thing, but for the most part, those were our most severe accidents that we had. Fire, our fire department and police responded to Walpole Woodworkers. This was a report of a forklift truck that had a propane tank on the back, and somehow the propane tank caught fire, and all units responded down there with fire, and the fire department did a great job. They got up there and they knocked this fire down before it spread. It was actually inside of one of those buildings down there, so it was confined to that space, and the fire department got in there, firefighters knocked that fire down, and they were able to prevent any further damage or injuries. There was one person that was injured at the scene. They received some minor burns, and they were transported by a Sharon ambulance to Norwood Hospital. But great job, quick response there, and good job getting in there and taking care of that situation. Still on the 8th, we had a shoplifting. This occurred at Walmart, and they were detained by loss prevention. The officers got up there. They were able to determine that it was a very small nominal amount of money that was involved of merchandise, and therefore the officers in the store came to the conclusion that it was best just to do a trespass notice, or what we call a letter of disinvite. And so those individuals were served with that letter and told to not return to that location anymore, or else they could be arrested for trespassing. Leaving the scene of a crash, this occurred. A victim reported that their rock wall in front of the house was damaged, and there were vehicle parts that were kind of strewn all over the place at that scene. The officers went down. There was some damage to this victim's property, and as such would be looking for a golden color. It appears to be like a Subaru type model based on some of the debris that was left at the scene. We did put out an administrative message as well as notify other departments. But if anybody has any information on a older model Subaru golden color, we would like to know about that so that we can follow up with this crash and hopefully get the victim some money, or get that victim some, able to take care of that wall and take care of their property. Because this is obviously a hit and run where nobody notified the police of this crash. Snowstorm crash, another one. This one here, this was on the 9th, February 9th, and this one involved one of our town ambulances, and this occurred, the ambulance was on their way to a medical emergency, and the vehicle came the other direction, lost control trying to get out of the way of the ambulance, but ended up actually going towards the ambulance and sideswiping the ambulance. Again, no injuries with this crash as well. So we're glad for that, and we're also glad that the two firefighters were okay, that were driving the ambulance, and the person that unfortunately struck the ambulance as well. This is just one of those unforeseen events, but in the nature of preparedness, we were able to dispatch out the second ambulance, and were able to take care of the emergency call while the officers could go and tend to this crash here. On February 10th, there was an arrest. This is kind of an interesting case. I put this in there because of that. But there was a shoplifting at Kohl's. There was two 28-year-old men who are listed as homeless people, and they were shoplifting at Kohl's. Kohl's Loss Prevention notified us, and we went up there. As a result of this whole situation, officers did conduct a search of a motor vehicle that was owned by these two individuals in the parking lot. We located multiple forms of property, a generator, There was multiple boxes of diapers, there was cameras, there was vacuums, a lot of tools, sneakers, electric shavers, a lot of different merchandise still all packaged up inside of that vehicle and obviously suspected to be illegally obtained. And as a result, these two individuals were charged with receiving a significant amount of stolen property. Those are just a few of the things that the officers found in the car. There's a lot more. But we look at this as, you know, we don't have to show that where these things got stolen. We just have to be able to prove, and I believe the officers can, that these items are stolen, and therefore they can be charged with receiving stolen property. And in this case, so as the officers were also searching this vehicle, they found some liquid form of some substance of liquid form, as well as white powder. Through the investigation, the officers were able to determine that this liquid and this white powder was GHB, which is a Class B substance. It's a synthetic. Basically, what GHB is, it's a mixture of different solvents. It could be floor stripper, it could be drain cleaner. It's a club drug. It's also known as the date rape drug. It's typically used by teens and adults at like raves or parties. It's a club scene type of drug, and it's very dangerous. I mean, typically this drug is mixed in somebody's drink, a lot of times unbeknownst to that person, and then they can suffer from not just the euphoric effects, but they can basically get to the point where somebody can pass out from it, and therefore, you know, they're unable to make very good decisions. And so it is a very dangerous drug. These two individuals possessed that drug. It was inside of the vehicle. To their own statements, that is what it was, and we will be sending that drug to the lab to further verify it. But as a result of this entire incident, these two men were charged with larceny over $250, which is a felony in Massachusetts. As well as one of them gave a false name at booking, so when they were being booked, they gave a different name. Again, as I mentioned before, we're going to run the fingerprints. Hopefully that's going to come back and we're going to be able to identify them anyway. But they gave a false name, and the reason why they gave a false name was because the individual had several warrants out for their arrest. So they were charged with giving a false name to a police officer and then charged with possession of the Class B substance and receiving the stolen property. So there was a great job by the officers on that case, Officer Foley and Doherty. Next call was a fight. The officers responded to Longview Farm for a fight. However, upon arrival, it was determined that it was more of a verbal confrontation, not a physical fight. However, there was also another incident there last week where it was a staff member who was assaulted and sustained some hand injury and was treated at the hospital and released. So there was a couple incidents down there that officers dealt with, and one that had resulted in some injuries to a staff member. An overdose. Walpole officers responded to some type of an overdose or a person having some type of an episode. It was really kind of unknown what was going on. But when they arrived, they discovered an individual that was suffering from some type of medical emergency, and the officers started to kind of investigate what was going on. And this did not turn into an arrest or anything like that, but we got the person some help, got them over to the hospital. And according to this investigation, the person had consumed marijuana, significant amount of marijuana through means of a vape or a vaporizer, and also had mixed that substance in with some homemade edibles that they had consumed. And again, you know, this is a situation where this is a new trend. Like, this stuff wasn't happening a year ago in the frequency that we're seeing it now. But the trend is consuming multiple servings of these concentrated forms of THC, these edibles, or any of these extracts, the extracts from the marijuana plant. You know, it may not kill somebody, but it does affect their cognitive ability. It does affect their behavior and their decision making, and it's to the point where situations like this are even causing psychosis. And we know that marijuana, especially in frequent use and in high concentrates of THC, can cause psychosis and suicidal ideation and everything else. So this is not a safe drug, and I'm going to continue to make our community aware of that in every way that I can, because it's not safe. It was a mistake legalizing this drug, and you know, I'm going to continue to let that be known as much as I can. But I'm glad this person's okay, and they were able to be treated at the hospital. On February 11th, there was a prisoner transport. So I just threw this in there because this was the 2 other individuals that were arrested for all of the stolen merchandise because they were not bailed out. They could not make bail, and we transported them over to the Norfolk County House of Correction, and they were kept there. And part of it was really because the cells needed to be cleaned after they were in there, and as well as the cruisers that they were transported in. And 24 Trauma came out and took care of that for us. Lastly, a man came in to report that he had bought a new laptop for his son, and also he had gotten his son's passport that he was going to send him down to school while he was in Indiana. And a week went by. He made contact with his son had not received the new laptop or his passport. So that started to raise some flags. They went back to the UPS store. They tried to make contact with the owner, and there's really no explanation at this point. However, they're saying that it was never taken in. However, there's an employee that said they did physically take it, and then it went to a back room, and it just hasn't shown up there. So this is an investigation. It's an ongoing investigation to find out what happened with this victim's computer as well as his son's passport. And we will be working jointly with UPS to conduct that investigation. And I will give you an update on that as to where that goes. Unattended kids, we received a report of some underage kids that were inside of a motor vehicle that was running at Walmart. The officers went down there, and what the caller, first of all, you have to praise the caller for calling us on this. It's much appreciated. This could have been a situation where these kids could have been exposed to some danger. However, when the officers got there, they did find an older person that was inside of the vehicle that was not visible to the caller when they called. So it turned out that the kids were fine. They were reunited with their mother inside the store, and it wasn't as bad as it sounded when it came in. But we do appreciate when people call about this stuff so that we can check on it. And this is a great turnout, that there was somebody older that was in the vehicle, and that turned out okay. Breaking and entering that occurred in Mendon, and they reported to us that the vehicle that was fleeing the scene, they were able to obtain a registration plate that came back to a Walpole resident. However, it was determined that Walpole resident no longer lives in Walpole, that they had moved off to New Hampshire recently and no longer lived there, and that there was some information provided as to the male operator who could have been driving this car at the time. So Mendon was shared some information from us, and they will continue that investigation into the breaking and entering of a dwelling over there. February 12th, crash into a building. Our officers responded to 7-Eleven in Walpole Center for a vehicle that was into a building. Upon arrival, they found an elderly gentleman from Medfield who had unfortunately got out of his vehicle. He had left it running, walked away, got inside of 7-Eleven, away from the vehicle, but since the vehicle was not put in park, he unknowingly left the vehicle in drive, and it jumped over the curb, went over the curb, the sidewalk there, and into the front of 7-Eleven. And it basically smashed out and shattered the glass to the front door area, as well as warped the frames of that door. Didn't actually penetrate inside of the building, but it caused enough damage and significant damage to the front of the building. So it was an oversight. This person obviously just left the vehicle without putting it in park, left it in drive, and it caused some damage as a result. Malicious destruction, we got a call to respond to a Main Street location. There were some individuals there that were arguing over some damage to a motor vehicle. That then turned into an argument about this tenant and the landlord arguing over marijuana being smoked in the home, and looking for advice on what to do about that situation. And the officers helped them out with that. Peace restored at the scene there, and some advice given to the landlord as well as to the person involved. February 14th this morning, and that will conclude us. We did a warrant sweep this morning. Officer Bethany, Officer Crown, as well as Detective Sullivan went out. And I've mentioned this before, we do some warrant sweeps. And we went out this morning and they arrested 3 different individuals on 3 different parts of the sweep. One was a female from Medfield who had a default warrant from our department in out of Rentham Court for a second offense OUI. The second one was for a male from Walpole, which was for possession of Class B, and the substance under the Class B was oxycodone or Percocet, and possessing that drug without a prescription. And the third one was a default warrant for a male in Walpole as well. So as a result of this sweep, there were 3 individuals that were arrested. I know they did go to some other towns, Foxborough, in order to locate some other individuals on warrants, but they weren't able to locate anyone else. And you know, one of the things is the warrant with the second offense OUI, that person is facing, you know, possibly 60 days in jail, up to 2.5 years in jail. Some fines, you know, they could lose their license up to 3 years, and because of Melanie's law, this type of situation, it could end up with you know, the ignition interlock device placed in the vehicle, you know, while they try and regain their driving privileges. So they're facing some significant issues there because of the second offense OUI, and you know, this person really shouldn't have been out there because they just basically defaulted, didn't show up for their court arraignment or their court hearing or whatever at some point to issue the default, and were not complying with the law. So part of it may be because they are facing some punitive action here because of the second offense. So that ends our Walpole Five-0 episode for this week. And again, just want to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. For you guys out there, get out there and get your wife or girlfriend a card. You know, I got to get out of here and do that myself. All right. So thank you and take care.